Yes, I'm just waiting for it to show up on my timeline. I
Mhm.
mean, my notification, so I could just see what it looks like.
Mhm. Welcome, family, to the Empower Hour. We appreciate you joining us for another episode of Trump, Biden, or with the question mark. We're talking about the Black vote this evening. We ask and we encourage you guys to share this stream so we can get as many family members, community members as possible to join this discussion. We have with us on the Zoom line this evening, the one and only Baba Imhotep Fatiu. He is the lead organizer for Pan-African Liberation Movement, also known as PLM, based out of Baltimore, Maryland. Phenomenal program, and that's just one of the myriad of different things that he does as a community activist and an organizer. I'm not going to go into too much because he could tell you a lot more about himself than I can, and just stay tuned because this brother's voice is powerful, and we're going to be talking about the or between the Trump and the Biden debacle is what I like to call it. This whole fight we got going on from one side to the other, at least bouncing the ball. So Baba Imhotep is going to do what he does so eloquently and so well and bring it back to the center for us. Hanifa, did you want to share anything from
Well,
your end before we get started?
for those that don't know me, I am one of the hosts of the Empower Hour, and we just welcome you in this conversation. We encourage you guys to engage us as well in the comment section. We can see your comments, and we do use like any questions that you may have for the guests. We do try to get to them. We get to try to get to as much as possible. So feel free. We can see your comments. Whether it's an amen, right on. I know Baba Imhotep likes a lot of feedback. So whatever it is, raise force, amen, amen, ashe, whatever you have, we encourage that.
Well, Imhotep, you are no stranger to the Empower Hour program. You have been the most consistent voice we've had on the program since. I mean, you've been on the program more than any other guest, and for good reason. We had the show last week. This is a follow-up to the Trump or Biden. We had two brothers on last week. One was a staunch Trump supporter. The other was voting for Biden, but wasn't absolutely positively in Biden's corner. He was more along the lines of, he's better than Trump. So, and they had it out. And if anybody have not seen that episode, just check on the Empower Hour talk show on the Facebook page and you can see that. And so, Baba, we wanted you to come on and talk to us about this presidential election from a different perspective. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to just let you do your thing and let us know, what are your thoughts? How do you feel about this whole presidential election going on right now as it relates to Black people?
First, I would like to thank you, Sister Alkma and Sister Hanifa, for putting this format together. I want to thank you and give praise for your consistency of just making a way for, for centered dialogue to take place and for it to happen, because it's necessary, it's needed. And as always, I'm Baba Imhotep. As Sister Alkma say, I'm the lead organizer, founder of PLM, which is Pan-African Liberation Movement. And my position across the board, whether it's social, political, economic, spiritual, psychological, you name it, I have one central position, and that's African sovereignty, African people. What's best for African people? That's always at my center. I am acutely aware of the society we live in, so I know that our people have been orientated to engage in such discussions. So what I'll say is this first. to give an example of where my mind is at, and then I will engage the discussion for the sake of the people. So let's use this analogy. It's a very potent analogy. If you take prisoners who are literally incarcerated at some institution in the USA, and let's say you got 3,500 prisoners, captives, whatever you want to call them. Every now and then, they may get a different warden, may be hired to run the prison. It truly makes no sense for the prisoners to be engaged in which warden is going to run their prison. Because at the end of the day, regardless of what warden they get, he or she is going to run their prison in the best interest of those who instituted the prison. They're never going to run their prison in the best interest of the captives. Never. I don't care which warden they get in there. So for us in this land, our conversations is always the wrong conversation. It's the wrong conversation to be trying to figure out who is going to do for us, Biden and Kamala, or Trump, the Trump administration, which is who's going to do best for us. That conversation, when we have that conversation in relation to our situation as a people, it reveals how politically immature we are. It reveals political immaturity. It reveals how politically insophisticated we are, right? And it demonstrates how off-centered we are when we're having such a conversation. Now, in terms of the political electoral politics, as an instrument, the first question that should be asked and answered is, what is the purpose of electoral politics? What is the purpose of that particular apparatus? Because once we understand the purpose of that apparatus, then we can engage differently. I'm gonna say this right here. Politics, or rather political, speaks to group. It's groupness. When you get into what it is to be political, you're talking about group, you're talking about collective, you're talking about race. It's never individual. It's always group. So one's level of political awareness or political education is reflected in his or her ability to represent his or her group. It translates into the group. So what happened in this land, they have created an apparatus that houses certain resources and certain powers. So the political people that's vying for that apparatus should understand it as an instrument that allows them to leverage power for their group. We don't have anybody that's going to do that. There's not a single white person that's going to seize hold of the political apparatus in this land and use it to lift Black people up. There's not a single one. Historically, contemporaneously, or futuristically. They don't exist, and they never will exist. Up until this point, we have not seen a Black person in politics that's going to do that at that level, either because of their orientation, because of their education. So right now, we don't really have true Black people in terms of their minds that's in that political arena. So if we're going to talk about politics, we got to talk about it from a whole different angle. If we are seeking that apparatus, we need to be about the business of organizing another party separate from any of the existing parties. The Democrats and the Republicans, if you look them up in this land, they are considered as a duopoly. They're considered as a duopoly, even though you have several other different types of parties. But why is it that the Democrats and the Republicans are considered a duopoly? Because they're the same. That's a quarter. They're two different sides of the same quarter. Look at the history. It's no different from Trump. Trump is no different from Obama in his administration, Clinton in his administration, Bush in his administration, Reagan in his administration, Carter in his administration, and we can keep going back. They are no different. The policies that they put forth, the way in which the power is handled, welded, and dispensed is never in the interest of African people. It's never in the interest of African people. And I think we delude ourselves when we use white logic. Well, do the lesser of two evils. That's foolishness. That's foolishness. That's like me saying, that's like me walking down the street, you know, and I get jacked, and one guy got a 9mm, the other guy got a 40 caliber. And they say, which one of us you want to shoot you? You see what I'm saying? It's not the same calibers. So I sit there and say, well, damn, well, shooting with the 9. I'm going to feel the pain regardless. Shooting with the 9 instead of the 40. That's the reasoning. That's immature reasoning. And we're using very immature reasoning because our thinking have been distorted by white people. So my position is this here. I don't think we need to be concerned about voting, period. Right? I don't think we need to be concerned about voting, period. Because nothing there is going to work for us. Now, am I against that process? I'm not necessarily against the process. If we could put somebody up there that's truly going to rock for us, and we get behind that person, and that person go in and do what he or she has to do, I'm okay with that. But the current people that's stepping forward do not have our best interests at heart. I'll give you an example. Essentially, education across the board, I don't care where you receive it at. Education socializes. I don't care who you get it from. It socializes. If you get it in China, it socializes the Chinese people. If you get it in Japan, it socializes the Japanese people. If you get it from African-centered individuals, we're socializing our children to think about Africa first. Wherever you get it from, it socializes. So if you spend all your time going through all of their educational institutions, right, you have been socialized to think in the best interest of this political system. They're not going to educate you to go against the system. And even though even though some people say, well, I take a different stance. You may take a different stance, but in the final analysis, you're not necessarily against the way things are set up. You just have a different viewpoint, but you still is for. You're not necessarily saying let's wipe out capitalism. You're still for capitalism. You still use the same terminology. You should say, well, what about the working class? You're still using the same rhetoric. You know what I'm saying? You use the same logic when you watch a video that's killing a black man unarmed. You reason the same way. You don't come in there and say that was murder. You reason the same way. Those police that assassinate us, they get the same level of justice, whether it's a white person watching it or a black person or a Chinese person. Everybody sides with this system when it comes to us. So if we're going to talk about politics, the first thing we need to understand is what's the business of politics? What's the business of politics?
Baba Imhotep,
yes.
If I can ask a quick question. So I know you briefly touched on, we have one of the running mates, which would be Kamala Harris. So I know that PLM and your organization, we had the Race First rally, and we've been discussing a lot about Race First. Does Race First, would it be considered Race First if someone says, well, there's an Obama running or there's a Kamala running? Is the Race First that you speak of, can it be applied to politics at all? Or are we speaking about Race First completely outside of the political arena? Because from what you're just saying, it serves us no purpose. It never really has. And so some people might say, well, there's a black person running. So isn't that Race First? What do you say to that?
I would say this. When it comes to black people in the United States of America, we have to be very clear as how we assess and measure one another because of the damage that we have endured. So granted, one may have the phenotype of a black person, but one may think and act totally against the best interests of black people. So with Race First, it gets into politics, and a Race First politics is a black agenda. I'll give an example. So when everybody walk into Congress and they're in their session, all of the politicians, they're having these discussions. I'm gonna tell you what's evident. What's evident is the race of every person that's in there. That's evident because you walk that way. So if it's an Asian person is in there, that's evident. If it's a white person, that's evident. If it's a black person, it's evident. And on the basis of who you are, it's automatically, and it should be assumed that you speak for those people because you made it here. So therefore you are representative of those people by way of your race and your affiliation. So if for a black person to be in politics, they would have to have a black agenda and forever push a black agenda. Now, for a black person to be in politics and you do not push a black agenda and you keep on trying to find this neutral agenda, that's not race first and you're not for black people. You are trying to appease white people. White people don't appease anybody. White people don't seek to appease anybody. White people do for white people first and foremost. Every single policy that they push serves white people. And they don't apologize for that. So if I was a hypothetically speaking, which I know I would never be, but I'm gonna say this just for clarity's sake. If I was a senator as a black person and I was there in the Senate, every chance I speak or put forth anything, I would have to keep black people in my rhetoric, regardless of who that offends. Now, am I suggesting that everything I want, I'm going to get? I'm not going to get everything, but I'm not going to let up off of black. That's not going to get pushed to the side. So I'm going to be in that door. I'm going to be in there one person, but I'm going to be fighting a battle in there. And they're going to know that every time I speak for black people solely. Simple as that. Case in point, if I'm a mayor of Baltimore City and you got 70% black people in Baltimore City, why wouldn't I have a black agenda? That's foolishness. That's foolishness. How you gonna say you got 73% people in Baltimore that's black, and yet you saying you worrying about trying to do for everybody? Now, granted, you gotta do for Baltimore, but not at the expense of your own people. Not at the expense of trying to convince other people that you aren't quote unquote racist. That's what black people do. We go out our way to convince people we're not racist, something we can't be anyway by definition. And in doing so, we hurt ourselves. If you're a president and you black, take Donald Trump, for instance, right? Donald Trump never hid who he was for. And that's the reason why some black people, you see what I'm saying, are saying, well, go with the lesser two evil, go with Biden, because they think that Donald Trump was an anomaly, right? They think that he wasn't consistent with all other presidents. The difference is that Donald Trump just didn't care. You know, he's a big child playing. You know, he's done everything. You know, he done built houses, built hotels. He done made a lot of money. He done lost a lot of money. He done broke people. He done disrespect people. He done sat on TV. He done everything as a big kid. Well, what's the next thing on his bucket list? Well, let me run for the presidency. That was the next thing on his bucket list. He won, and he acted like a total immature child in office. And so black people who's not clear are saying, hey, well, if y'all don't get him out, he can make it harder. Well, what president haven't made hard for us? Which one? You know what I'm saying? The prison population became huge, and it was bursting because of Bill Clinton and his wife, the super predator. Come on now. The crack cocaine, Bush and Reagan. Come on, what are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? All of them done something devilish to us. You just got to understand, know the history. All of them. You know what I'm saying? They had their hands in the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. This government. What are we talking about? J. Edgar Hoover had his hand in the bringing down of Marcus Garvey, the destruction of the Black Panther Party under the guise of the presidency. The Federal Bureau of Investigation reports to the president. Come on now, what are we talking about?
Well, what about Obama? I'm playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, Obama the same. No different. Obama put AFRICOM in Africa. You know what I'm saying? A military installation in Africa. Obama didn't pardon not a single black person that was worthy of being pardoned. He had an opportunity to do that. What did he do? He didn't do anything for the most part. You know, he let them people push him around. He didn't put in the forth as many executive orders as this white boy is doing. When this white boy don't get this way, what do he do? Executive order. But that executive order. He showed that you can do what you want to do as the president.
I have a question. I find that whenever I speak publicly about us doing for self, right? And I know that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But in general aspect, if I say things such as, you know, it's time for us to start creating our own system, doing our own thing, moving in that direction, the vast majority of the pushback I normally receive is things like, I hear a lot of, we're not in a position, or we, you know, we need reparations, or it's always, for me, I feel like somewhere deep within us, we don't possess the self-assurance that we can actually do something for ourselves. So what do you think about that? Or why do you think that is? Why do you think that whenever the conversation stems towards being self-sufficient, that Black people always can't, you know, don't want to go there? They rely back on this system of things and how things are running. What do you think that stems from?
The one thing we have to give the United States credit, well, the Europeans credit, they are very great at marketing themselves and creating a false illusion as to who they are and their power. So they have presented themselves in such a way that they have convinced many individuals that they are Europeans, the end all be all. Some of us can't see past them. Some of us can't even begin to fathom that you can actually do something contrary to what they do. Some of us don't even know that we have our own way of doing things. And so since they have projected themselves as the standard by which all others should be judged, the standard by which all other things should be measured, that enables them to maintain the hold on the minds of so many people, right? A lot of our people rely too much on the education that they received from white people. A lot of us rely too much on that, and we just don't. We don't want to go back and undo it, because we probably spent, 12. We probably did all the way through high school. We probably did 4 years for a BA, and some of us do 2 years for a master's, and then some of us go up and do another 4 or 6 years to get a PhD. That's a long time. And now you got a lot of debt. You're trying to get a job and start paying the debt down. And then you're hearing all these other individuals that's helping you that see things a different way. And the part of you know what they're saying is the truth, but you don't want to go back and relearn all over again because you feel like you've invested so much time. So you just play devil's advocate. You just keep pushing back and you accept the status quo. That's where a lot of us are. A lot of us have conceded. A lot of us have pretty much surrendered to the way things are. Some of us are still pushing against it. Some of us are to see it another way. Also, you will never know what you can do if you don't know who you are. If you don't know who you are, you'll never know what you can do. And largely, who we are is based in who we were. Again, example. Excuse me. You take a child that comes from a powerful Black family that has resources, that has connections. But this child was removed from this family at 1 year of age and subjected to hardship for 18 years. Now, what that child demonstrates is not going to be what that child would demonstrate if he or she knew who she or he were in terms of his or her lineage. Because lineage gives you power. When you realize you plugged into a power source, you move on that power. So for a lot of us, people have information, but people do not have understanding. They have information about a lot of things that doesn't really matter. but they have no understanding in the eyes in terms of who they are, who they were, what they can do based on what we have done. The European make you believe that a lot of the things that are taking place today is new knowledge. So we think that, you know, people didn't do things. You know what I'm saying? We think that technology is quote unquote a European modern invention. That's how people think about it, right? We don't know that we was doing irrigation, that we was doing what they define as being stargazing, that we was doing surgery, mathematics. We don't understand that a higher form of mathematics went into constructing a lot of the temples and the pyramids and things of that nature. We don't understand that. We don't understand that the Metu Neta, you know what I'm saying, is a highly sophisticated language. So we don't understand this. We let Europeans tell us things like that. Well, you know, well, history and prehistory. They said, well, prehistory is the time period before written history began. And they use written history based on when they started writing history. And that's what we say. You see what I'm saying? But we was writing our own history through that way before they was even thought about. But we let them define everything. And then all we do is parrot it and mimic it. So we lock ourselves into their worldview about what the world is. And that's how we limit ourselves. For me, I say bump them and everything about them. Mm-hmm. Bump them and everything about them. All we need is what our ancestors have given us.
Baba Imhotep, so I have my question is a two-part question. So what about laws? Because you hear a lot of people talk about local politics. So, and how that may have like the greatest impact. In other words, like if you want to see where your vote matters, local politics is important. So what about laws that significantly impact Black people specifically in negative ways? Should we focus on possibly getting someone in like local office to push a Black agenda? That's the first part of the question. And then when we talk about Black agenda, when you speak of Black agenda, what specifically are we talking about here? Because someone could just get an agenda and paint it Black, and is it really for the well-being and upliftment of our people? So when you speak of Black agenda, specifically, what are we talking about? If you could give us some bullet points, and also if you could speak to local elections, if we can, what about us trying to see if we could put people in office to change certain laws that significantly impact Black people? Because at the end of the day, we still live in the land. So what does that, what does that look like?
Yes, we do live in the land. That's the reason why the push, like any other people, their focus is never the land that they migrate to. Their focus is the land from which they originate, because that's their power source. I think our focus and our emphasis is too much on the USA rather than on Africa. I think that, so let's say hypothetically speaking, if a person is at the executive level, I think some of a Black agenda would be politics and policies, foreign policies that builds with Africa, right? In a very humane way. I think that those types of conversations with the African governments and things like that, to push through dual citizenship, to push forth, you see what I'm saying, different types of international commerce and trade and things like that, you know what I'm saying, on a small level. How can we pass laws where Black small businesses can deal with African countries and things like that, and just bypass a lot of this European stuff? Because a lot of times, a lot of Black businesses, we in business, but a lot of our product still comes from European manufacturers. You know what I'm saying? So how is the way as though we could just start creating small Black businesses and we deal directly with the motherland and things of that nature there, right? Those types of things on that basic level. Also on the basic level in terms of just thinking about, if we talk about laws, the entire system in terms of law is corrupt. Every Black person that have ever been convicted is a political prisoner. You know, granted, I know we tend to isolate it to brothers and sisters who probably was engaged in unique activities, but at the end of the day, every Black person have been convicted as a result of the politics that brought about the laws. Every Black person. So all of us are political prisoners at the end of the day. So when we start talking about things like that, we got to think about, how do you move the ball, right? It's not going to be a radical pushing things out the way now unless you talk about a revolution. That's making it radical. So if it ain't going to do it like that, so you can say, well, one of the things that you can think about if a person is saying they want to do a black agenda, they want to talk about black people, how do you move some of the resources, you know what I'm saying, to some of the communities that need the resources? How do you set it up where as though we got situations where we know community organizations that's doing good work that cannot get resources because of red tape? How can you move some of the red tape and get funds and resources directly to the people in the community, the ones that we know that's doing the work already, right? So those types of things can be put in place. People don't think like that because, like I say, like a sheet of paper. This paper has a margin. You got a red line and a red line. And the average person that write on paper writes inside those red lines, but don't really know why they do that. They don't really know why they do that. They just do it. But I never wrote inside the red lines in school. And I only went to the 8th grade. I always wrote from end to end. And every time the teacher said something, I never changed it. I don't know why I did that, but it never made any sense in my mind to stay inside the margin. Most of us do not know how to think creatively outside of what these Europeans have put in place. We only know how to behave, think, operate, and function within the confines of the structures that they put in place. So to have a real black agenda, you need someone that's 100% black in their thinking so they can be creative in the things that they say and the things that they do. You know what I'm saying? So I'm talking about on a local level. I'm talking about a black mayor that put a cabinet together, and then you look at your city, northeast, southwest, northeast, southeast, southwest, southeast, southwest, and you find out every single grassroots organization, black, and you bring them to the table. Bring them to the table, do the research on them, to make sure they've been consistent for a time period. Look at the work they've been doing and all that. Do your little due diligence. If they've been consistent, if the people know them in the community, go out there, send your team out there, a task force, to go back in the community with these organizations and let the community vouch for them. If the community say, yeah, they've been here, they've been consistent, this, that, and other way, then give them the money they need to do the job. That's what I'm saying. Do it that way. That's very simple. But that's thinking outside the box, though. But give them their money, because the people are supposed to do what? Regulate themselves. Not government. It's the people. And that's at the federal level. So the mayor is functioning well, and then the mayor, he got all these, the communities working there, right? Sanitation in Baltimore City. They don't come and get the trash. Okay, you want to get the trash? All right, let's get the community to do it, right? Let's do community sanitation. What is it going to cost y'all to do it? Clean your own communities up. We're going to get you the funds. We go out there and clean our own communities up. That's thinking outside the box. Simple as that. Okay, well, bam, the police don't come. We don't want the police to come. Well, we got some brothers and some sisters, you see them, so they're highly trained. They understand security. They want to secure the neighborhood. You see what I'm saying? Can they get a contract? Why can't they get a contract in West Baltimore, but the people in downtown in the harbor can get a contract? Make me understand that. So don't tell me we can't get a contract in Southwest Baltimore if the harbor can get a contract. Certain parts of Baltimore City have private sanitation. Certain parts have private security. So why can't we get it in West Baltimore? So this is what I'm talking about, black agenda, just going up against what you see, the stuff that's not right. How is it that certain schools in Baltimore City can get more funding and resources than other schools? They're part of the same district. How is that possible? Because Dunbar sits beside John Hopkins, and Booker T. Washington sits in West Baltimore beside McCullough Holmes. But see, it takes somebody that's vested in black people to talk this way to the power. Somebody who don't care about how they feel.
That's right.
We don't have those kind of politicians. We got people that's in politics for their own self-interest. They want to go in there and lick butt. That's what we got. We got people who want to just be able to go to the parties with white people. We got people that's so insecure, that's so puny in their own personhood that they want to be in politics so they can stand beside white people who they perceive to be powerful. That's what we have. We got cowards in office at every level, local, national, international. They cowards.
The Congressional Black Caucus comes to mind, all of them. I got a question about reparations. What is your thoughts and opinions on how we should be maneuvering in that arena?
This is what I would say. That's a great question. And I get asked that question a lot by different people. So look at it like this. You take a military. The military have different branches. You got your Air Force, you got your Navies, the Marine, you got your Green Beret, your Navy SEALs, so on and so forth. All of them fighting the same fight, but they fighting it differently. Reparations isn't my necessarily fight, but I support those who fight for reparations because I understand it. I understand why they fight that. If I had to weigh in on the conversation, I think what I would do first is I would bring together our best legal minds. I would get our best legal minds together. I would get our best economists together. I would get our best political people together. I would get our best spiritual people together. I would get our best people together to understand spirit wellness. Not gonna say mental health people, because I think we beyond mental health. I would get our people that's best geared towards spirit wellness, and our people that's best understanding how to educate Black children. And I would bring all those people together, and we will figure out something that's suiting, that we feel is suiting, that we can fight for, we can push for, and that's how we would do it. If it's just if we just asking for money, that's not going to happen, because you got to understand one thing, right? And this is how it's set up. Government, the government is as an organization, is an entity. It only deals with another entity, and we still individuals. We're still individuals, which it's not going to just give. It's not going to do that, right? Now, even if it did something, if it was to do something like that, right, it will be something highly scaled back, you know. But just to say, well, hypothetically, if you want to grab an arbitrary number and they just say, well, $6.6 trillion, here, break them off, right? That ain't gonna happen. And even if something like that was possible, by the time that would happen, they would have already situated themselves somewhere else in a new level of type of power. You know, so reparations got to be something that we can think about it. Even if it came to it from a point of view where as though we put together some type of organizational structure that can represent all Black people, and all Black people register to this organizational structure as members. And then that organizational structure dealt with the government, because the USA is an incorporation. It's an entity. So if we done something like that, we got all those people that I'm talking about, the best of us, you know, and we worked it out and created this entity. And then we set out to do a campaign to get all the Black people to become members, and the membership could just be $5 a year. You know what I'm saying? Just $5 a year in membership. But now we have an entity, you are a member, and then an entity go, and it can do something like that. And then if it was just a fund, then the funds could transfer like that. That's just me thinking off the top of my head for the most part, because I haven't put a whole lot of thought into it, but I know something like that is feasible and something like that is possible.
My other question is, so we do understand that just politics in general, politicians in general, and you just use Baltimore as an example, and we see this in so many other places, specifically certain inner cities, where even the Black politicians who are in office are not doing right by people, or by Black people, or they don't even know what a Black agenda looks like. So we were taught, you discussed, like, if we can't take someone who, you know, they have our backing and they have a Black agenda and push that person into that space, if that can't happen, then we're still pretty much on our own. And in the meantime, between time, until that happens, if it ever happens, let's discuss some of the things that we need to be doing as African people in this land, first individually and then collectively. If you could just go over some of those things that we need to be focused on right now, outside of depending on the government to bring about change amongst our people.
Now, something that we don't talk about enough, that every single Black person should be thinking about, should have thought about, or beginning to think about and focus on. We are severely and highly damaged as a people. And we are damaged at the spirit level. All of us, if we haven't already did it, we should be trying to get ourselves healthy. That should be part of our, when we talk about growth and development a lot, that should be a part of that growth and development. A lot of people are chasing information without really trying to heal themselves. And so our relationships are falling apart. Our families are in shambles. Our organizations are falling apart. And if you go back and do research and just talk to different people, and you'll see that it's linked to the trauma and the damage that we have. It's linked to that. It's linked to that. So I'm starting there because what we really have to do is we got to organize. It becomes so difficult for us to organize because people have so many internal issues going on as a result of living in this racist, white, terroristic society. We live in one of the most hostile places on earth. We live in a literal war zone. And we are casualties of this war. And we are damaged by it. So on a personal level, we need to get healthy at the level of the spirit. Personally, we need to learn who we are. And the only way we're going to learn who we are, we must begin to study our indigenous, authentic history and culture and learn what that is, right? And what I mean by our indigenous, I'm just more so talking about the ways of being and thinking that African people exemplified prior to coming in contact with Europeans. That's what I mean. You know, we had unique ways of doing things. Once we can do that and begin to recenter ourselves, because we have become off-centered. And once we can begin to recenter ourselves and reorientate ourselves culturally, then we can begin to organize. Because no people comes from under dominance without organizing themselves against the domination. Let's talk about Frantz Fanon for a minute. So to make my point. So Frantz Fanon was a psychiatrist from Mauritania. He was commissioned by France to work in Algeria to study the people, whatever. So he was trained by them and so on and so forth. But while he was there, he began to notice something. And as he was studying them and working with the people, observing the people, and just watching the people, and what he realized is that all of their issues was linked to the way the French, or France rather, was oppressing them. He realized the correlation, and he actually came back and told his administrators, you know, like, this is the issue. The problem is this, that, and other. They really wasn't trying to hear it. They downplayed it, so on and so forth. Long story short, over time, he gets fed up. And he joined the Algerian revolution for the most part. But he came from being a psychiatrist, then he got into the revolution because he realized that what they was asking him to do as a quote unquote psychiatrist was really just try to victimize the victims, try to find fault within the victims. But he knew that wasn't the case. They wasn't messed up because of them. They wasn't messed up because their inability to do anything. They was messed up because these people were terrorizing them. And I'm saying that to bring it to us. We are victims of terrorism. We are victims of terrorism. And because of that, we are psychologically distorted. Psychologically distorted. That's the reason why we can't take accountability. Most of us, we can't take accountability. Most of us, we have a hard time falling in line with leadership, following orders. It don't rock well with us. Most of us don't know how to celebrate our brothers and sisters that might be the same ages of us, that's doing wonderful things. We can't even fix our mouth to say, I like what you're doing, right? It bothers us, a lot of us, you know? And that's because of how we have been dealt with in this land. We have been dealt with in ways that have arrested our development in critical areas of personhood. So I'm talking about like our spiritual development have been arrested. Our psychological development have been arrested. Our social development have been distorted. Why do you think, again, another example, why do you think you hear a lot of women say stuff like this? Well, I don't have a lot of female friends, but females, it's too much drama with them. That's like every 2 women says something like that. Like every 2 women says something similar to that. But how is that? How is it that you can't get along with your own species? Every time I look into the animal kingdom, all the lions get along. All the zebras get along. Why is it that you can't get along with your own species? Right? Why is that? Why is that when you walk down the street, you see another Black person, we can't speak to each other? Why is that? That's social deficiencies. So it's those type of issues that we have to address in a realistic way to build ourselves socially, psychologically, and spiritually, and then we begin to organize through learning who we are through our history and our culture. And we begin to organize ourselves, let the best amongst us do their jobs.
Shay.
Oh, you got it. You go.
I have another quick question. I know we got to get to the audience too, or the members. I see a lot of comments on the stream. I mean, a lot of, big ups, Baba, on the stream, a whole lot. Not a lot of questions. So if you guys have questions for Baba, shoot them out there. Allies, that's my question. Allies, what is your thoughts about Black people in this landmass reaching out to allies outside of the African continent that may not be of African descent? What is your thought processes? Is that a good idea? Do we need that in this stage in moment, or is that a no-go?
Realistically speaking, almost everybody outside of African people, in some sense, at some point in history, have sought to take advantage of us. Realistically speaking, when you talk about that, in some capacity, they've sought to take advantage of us. They have came out against us. They have said, in some capacity, they have shown who they truly are. So me personally, I don't believe we have allies outside of ourselves. I just don't believe that. For tactical reasons, can we possibly work with different people from a tactical point of view to achieve some minimal gains? Then maybe something like that may be possible. But in terms of allies we locked together, I don't think so. I don't think so. My reason for that is because the greatest mineral resources on earth are in Africa. And everybody in the world sees what's happening to Africa and African people. If people wanted to be our allies, they will be trying to be our allies, right? No one is trying to be our allies. No one is sympathizing with us. No one is empathizing with us, right? People are trying to figure out how to get in Africa and get those resources for themselves, right? Everybody, all of them, right? No one is saying, like the same way you just asked that question to me, in the same way we sit around in some of our organizations and we debate about that, no other people are sitting around their organizations saying, should we ally with African people? No one is having that conversation. We're the only ones because our political naivete. And that's what Dr. John Henry Clark calls it. That's his word. Those are his terminologies. He said he said due to political naivete. We think that way, right? Politics is group interest. So group interest is about the survival of the group. How do groups survive? We principally survive by relying upon ourselves, first and foremost, because only we are truly going to have our best interests at heart. We live in a society and we live in a world that's saturated with European thoughts, ideas, and principles. All other people in the world have already adopted the European way. Everybody is selfish and everybody is out for themselves from a racial point of view. The Chinese are for the Chinese. The Japanese are for the Japanese. The Koreans are for the Koreans. And we can go across the board, right? No one is thinking about us. So we need to not waste any more time to having those conversations about allying ourselves with any other people. We have to figure out how we can become more solidified with our own. We're a billion plus something people now in the world. We're a billion something people in the world. And we got tremendous amounts of brothers and sisters on the continent that want to work with us. We got Black political people now on the continent that's speaking in our interests. We got people now that want to be linked up. We just got to figure out how we're going to link ourselves up and start building something that's truly powerful and strong for African people. We need to solely focus on us. We our best. We stand a chance of saving ourselves by doing for ourselves.
So I have, this is probably my last question because I know I saw some questions in the comment section. But my own personal question, I know you just went over some things. I just wrote down, I know you touched on healing, just some things that we need to focus on individually and collectively. So you talked about healing, just health specifically as it pertains to the spirit. And then you focused on knowing yourself, which is an African-centered way of thinking and doing. And then you got to organize, and I kind of got stuck right there because I need you to speak to our tendency to allow ourselves to be so splintered to where we think that because you are the nose of the body and I am the arm of the body and someone is the eye of the body, right? And we have different functions, that somehow that means we have to be divided, not realizing that all of those parts work together for the whole, right? And so if you could speak to where, okay, you have PLM, you might have BBM up the road, right? And they might focus specifically on reparations. And you just spoke on the fact that I'm not against reparation, but it's not my focus. And then you might have somebody from BBM that come and say, well, since PLM, reparations ain't really their focus, then we can't really work with them. I need you to speak to that because I really think that we all have a role to play. If our focus is the collective. Oftentimes we think that whatever role we're playing is about us. And we forget that we are actually connected to the collective. So if you could just speak to that and how we can avoid allowing our different functions and different roles to divide us.
Good question.
Let me clarify myself like this. I like to use analogies to make it clear. So let's say if I was on a football team, you got a football team, but I'm a wide receiver. That's my role as a wide receiver, but I'm concerned with the tight end. I'm concerned with the running back. I'm concerned with the fullback. I'm concerned with anything that pertains to my team. But I know my role. My role is the wide receiver. So that's what I'm saying. It's not that I don't focus on reparations or I'm not into it. I am. I'm into any and everything that impacts African people. That's not my lane when I know you got more people that's better versed in that. For me to go into it, it's actually creating something that don't need to be created. So I rather support and assist the individual that's already doing it rather than trying to implement it myself. That don't make any sense. And for people who think like that, that's because they don't have an organized mind. And two, those are individuals who are more thinking about themselves rather than the whole. In my experience, they are egotistical and they are highly insecure. In my experience, oftentimes insecure people can't be around secure people. So if this person over here got a lane, but I notice that he or she is highly secure in that lane, I'm gonna find a reason not to even be aligned with them because I can't withstand the intensity of his security because I'm so insecure. And to be amongst him, it's gonna build my insecurity, which I wanna hide from everybody else. That's the reason why a lot of us can't come together. See, the difference between me and everybody else is this right here. I can work with anybody. If you can show and prove to me that you on your stuff, I know how to get in line. I don't gotta be in the front. I don't gotta take the lead. And believe it or not, quiet as kept, I prefer not to be in the lead. I do it because it gotta be done.
I've seen that firsthand.
Just a follow-up, I'm sorry. So you spoke earlier about trauma and how that kind of trickles over into us trying to come together and organize. Can the work on self and organization, since we are in the land of our oppressor, okay? And we are actually trying to heal in the midst of warfare, okay? Right. So is there a way for the work on self to be done and organization concurrently? Can that happen concurrently, or does one have to happen first before the other? Because we all come in with some issues. So what does that look like in healing and organizing concurrently?
Realistically speaking, our total existence is steeped in us being warred upon. So there's no way for the healing to take place apart from us being warred upon, right? The organizations that we construct have to build the components into the organizations that's going to speak to those issues. We can't act as if those issues don't exist and just keep on rocking and rolling and moving. So our organizational structures have to build the components in that's going to address those issues that we are dealing with, and it takes place simultaneous within while we are pushing for African sovereignty. It's being done simultaneous. Now, think about it like this. You got an organization, you got different people, you got different roles. PLM is for the sovereignty of African people, but there are going to be individuals inside PLM that may never come and do an interview like I do. You may never see them doing an interview, not because they can't interview, because this is just not their role, but behind the scene, they healing everybody in the organization, and it's taking place in the midst, right? That individual that you're not going to see, you probably ever see them, but they're getting the work done. So the work has to get done simultaneous, but those who are directly on the battlefield that's confronting the opposition, that's taking more blows, they need to be able to go sit down and talk to that spiritual person to get patched back up, to get replenished, to get refueled, to get rejuvenated, to get recentered. Because sometimes you enter the battlefield with people take blows and they abandon you on the battlefield, and that hurts you. Mm-hmm. You know, some people leave the battlefield and they tell a lie on you, and then that hurts you. Mm-hmm. Some people leave the battlefield and they take your strategic plans and they take it somewhere else, and then that hurts you. So you need to be able to go back over there and get patched back up and get reassured that you're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. You know, keep moving. So that got to take place simultaneous.
Thank you.
As we push forward.
Let's touch on the comments, the questions in the comments section.
Yes, we do. Actually, I think he just answered one question William Dempsey had. How do we overcome our social deficiencies?
The only way to overcome social deficiencies is for the individuals who understand that they exist, is to point them out and to construct situations that allow for African people to socialize. And then the people or the persons who have the deficiencies, they have to be open for the accountability and the correction and allow themselves to develop socially. But you can't develop socially in isolation. A person is a person because of people. We tend to say Ubuntu. Ubuntu essentially is this here. The essence of Ubuntu is the ability and the capacity to recognize the essentiality in the other person. Mm. It's to recognize that the other person is essential to your growth and development. That's Ubuntu.
That's heavy.
And then engage in that. It's letting you know that you need the other person to be a full person.
So another question we have from Falasha Uhuru. He says, question for Baba Imhotep. How do we convince Black people that race-first thinking is not racist? And in fact, what's best for us as a race? So that's the question is, how do we convince Black people that race-first thinking is not racist, but it's what's best for us as a race?
Great question, brother. In terms of convincing them, that's going to be pretty difficult to do. Because those who do not want to understand it are those who have already chose to be against it. Mm. So it's simple as that, right? Because race first is very simple. You know, it should be instinctual, but it's not. It's very simple. So those who don't want to get it have already chose to be against it. And since they have chosen to be against it, we should deal with them accordingly. For those who just don't understand it but are receptive, all we have to do for them is just show them how we as a people benefit from doing for self. There are some receptive souls out there. Once we find those souls, Show them how doing for self benefits all of us and how that's consistent with the natural order of things in the universe. And once we can do that, the receptive individuals are going to grasp hold of it. Those who choose to be against it, we allow them to be against it. And at some point, we move against them.
So like leading by example.
Yes.
Moving forward, my question is we got a lot of big ups. The stream is busy, but not a lot of questions for you. And that sometimes I find is a good sign because more people are tuned into what you're saying. Moving forward, like what would you suggest to those who hear you and like what you're saying, can agree with what you're saying, but just don't know where to start, where to begin, what they should be doing, you know what I'm saying? So moving forward for people in that space, what do you recommend that they do to start aligning themselves with this type of teaching and understanding?
The first thing I think that they should do, if they have already arrived at the place that you have described, if they are there, they should find a Black, authentic organization, do their research on that organization. And once they find that organization, they should support that organization in some capacity. If they're not ready to join it, then they should support that organization. What I mean by support it, I mean financially support it, because we can. That's something we all can do. And I think that a lot of times we talk about organizations, but we got to recognize that a lot of our organizations are not receiving any independent funding from anywhere. And they always can use any type of financial support. So find an organization that you're willing to put your finances into. And I'm not saying put millions of dollars if you don't have millions of dollars. I'm saying if you can commit yourself to something that's as small as $20 a month, $30 a month, right? That's going to help. And at the same time, it allows you to develop the capacity to be consistent. And then at some point, get more involved in that organization. Figure out how you can begin to bring whatever your skills are that you can lend to that organization. Bring those skills to that organization. I think that's what we need to do. You know what I'm saying? Find an organization, become a part of the organization, or support the organization, and then begin to work with the organization. I don't think none of us should not be in some type of organizational capacity, even if that's just by being organizational networks, just having a network. We should not just be loners in the sense of a loner. So that's what I would say do. And reach out to the individuals who you feel has the understanding and ask them to suggest some books that you can begin to start reading. You know, figure out what books you can start out with, or DVDs that you can watch and things like that, so you can start your process of truly recentering your thinking.
Go ahead, Hanifa.
It's all right, Alkema, go ahead.
I was going to say, so, okay, I'm playing devil's advocate again. But I'm a Christian, Baba Imhotep. And I was always taught that we supposed to just love all people and be fair and to all people. And I don't want to align myself with so much Black stuff that you're talking, because that might go against my Christian principles and where I stand. So what do you say to me?
I would say, well, you don't want to align yourself with a whole lot of Black stuff because you're a Christian, but the Christians made everything white. So that your logic don't even add up. So you don't want to go Black because you're Christian, but your Christians made everything white in a colorful world. So how is it that you can go all in Christian, which is all white, but you can't come in Black? If you can give me an answer to that, then maybe you can make some sense. But from how I'm understanding what you're saying, that don't make any sense to me.
Imhotep, this is my last question. I know we gotta wrap up. So one of the things that I don't hear talked about a lot as it pertains to acquiring knowledge and gaining knowledge around self is the high illiteracy rate that is amongst our people, particularly in the district. We don't talk about that a lot. And when that's one part of it in reaching those people who, you talk about reading or watching lectures or, but as we know, illiteracy is more than just being able to pronounce words. There's a part of it that comprehension is important, what the word means, within context, all of that. So how would you say we can approach getting information to that part, that demographic, Black people who might be willing to learn, but there's like a level of embarrassment there around illiteracy. So maybe coming to a study group like yours is just way over their heads. You know what I mean? So they won't attend. Also too, when we talk about, well, not reparation, repatriation, a lot, that's been a conversation of recent a lot. And one of the things I had quoted to Alkema one time, in one of Buju Banton's songs, he says, "Who can afford to run will run, but what about those who can't?" And my mind always go to those people who they are not able to acquire passports. Okay, they are not financially sound enough to even begin to like maneuver, purchasing tickets. What does that look like? What is a visa? All of those things. How do we begin to engage that part of our community? Because they exist and they're not a small group. There are a lot more people that are illiterate, more people illiterate than we even are willing to talk about. How do we begin to approach and engage that part of our community in bringing them the knowledge that can actually help them to build self-esteem and remove the hopelessness that they're experiencing?
Your question is is a great question because it's real. But in my experience, what I look at it like this. This is where I'm at. So I'm gonna explain it. So where I'm at is all the terminologies, and I haven't eradicated all of them, but I strive to eradicate all the terminologies that the Europeans have used. Like even we say illiteracy and things like that, because by their standards, I'm illiterate. I only went to the 8th grade. By their standards, I'm uneducated.
And I only went to the 9th grade.
And I was actually sent and had my brain checked out. So I think that, but I know what you're talking about because it's real. But those individuals can be reached if the persons who want to reach them are willing to come down where they at. Mm-hmm. I think in my experience, 90% of the people who say they are conscious or woke, whatever terminology they use, 90% spend more time around people that already think as they think. Mm. That's what they do. They pretty much preach and talk to the choir, and criticize everything else, but never try to go out there and bring that up. So those individuals, that population that you talk about is a real population, but they can be reached because if you watch them, they have figured out how to operate, function, and survive already anyway. So it's just a matter of learning their mode of communication and then using their mode of communication as the bridge to bring them somewhere else, right? So that's what I've learned over the years, and that's what I strive to be able to do. I think I've learned how to do that because I've worked with quite a few individuals that couldn't do any of those things, read, comprehend, none of those things. But I've worked with those types of people before, and I watch them now, and I see how effective they are. And I can only, in a modest way, say I played some role in that. So I think it's a matter of meeting people where they are at. And I agree. I don't believe this. I never will believe it. There is not going to be a mass exodus of African people going to Africa. That's not feasible. That's not happening. You know what I'm saying? So that's never my conversation. So I don't even communicate that way. You know what I'm saying? That's not happening no time soon. And you're correct. Everybody that don't have the money to repatriate. So I don't even talk that to people. That's not my language. I don't even say that. I try not to talk to people. I try not to speak to people in ways that can only make them walk away feeling bad. I try to move away from that. I try to talk and meet you directly where you at. I don't even go to people and say, well, don't eat pork. I don't even do that. I don't do that. I know what I don't eat. It's simple as that. If you ask me a question about it, I'm going to answer you truthfully, but I don't come at you because of it. I don't rock that way. And I've learned how not to do that, so repatriate, yeah, if you can do it, cool, no doubt, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? But don't think you're not going, I've been to Africa 3 times, you know what I'm saying? And I love Africa. Africa's beautiful, but it's messed there too. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? The Europeans have messed the whole entire world up. Mm-hmm. So we got to be real mindful when we're saying things like that and who we're talking to. I think that if you want to reach people and you want to get people to grow and evolve, use yourself as an example first. So the first thing I do with most people is I talk about myself, not what I've quote unquote accomplished. I talk about who I once were. See? So I don't hide that I used to use heroin. I don't hide that. I don't hide that I was incarcerated. I don't hide that I used to smoke. I don't hide those things. I don't hide that I was a criminal as they defined it. I talk about the individual that I was, right? And I let you assess who you've met. Then you do the comparison. And then it's a question. So how you get from that to this? Then I can tell you. You know why? Because I can use myself as the proof of what I'm talking about. See, I'm the living example when I teach. I'm not talking theory. I'm the living example. So that's what I like to do, and it tends to help me out a whole lot.
Thank you for answering that question. You definitely hit on some really, really important points in answering that. It's just and what you're saying, I think we also need to be reminded oftentimes because we think our experience in America, of course it's unique, but it's not exclusive as far as white supremacy is concerned. And we constantly have to remind ourselves that white supremacy is a global thing. It is not an American, the thing is all over the globe. And so it shows up in different ways in different parts of the world. So when you spoke to repatriation, just know that you're going to go maybe in some parts of Africa and you're going to run into neocolonialism, colonial thinking, all of these things. So there is no getting away from it. I think we need to first deal with it within ourselves. So I appreciate you for your response to that question. I'll let you have it.
Yeah, and I know it's late, it's getting late, but gosh, he's so brilliant in how you break things down. And I do have one that, when going into what you were saying, I know you talked one time before on a previous program about us being our own worst enemy and that being untrue. Because I hear that a lot still. People will say that a lot. We are our own worst enemy. Can you just briefly go into that for us, Baba?
Yes, that's backwards logic, and that's individuals who have totally absorbed and assimilated the white ideal of us. That's what that is. Now, what I'll say is this: there is nothing that we can do to ourselves that can equal any of what white people have done to us. Nothing. There is no way. We can't even, our minds as African people, we can't even construct some of the devices that they have used to destroy us. We don't even think that way. If we was our worst enemy, you would see us doing to us what they have done to us. And granted, for those who don't understand what I'm saying, granted, we got issues, like no doubt we got our issues, and we got some things that we got to work with. But in terms of an enemy seeks your destruction. An enemy seeks your demise, right? Black people, we just struggle with getting it together. And in most cases, we misunderstand some things in our attempt to make some money, and we probably harm each other here and there for the most part. But in terms of us being our worst enemy, no, we're not our worst enemy. We can't be our worst enemy, because there's an enemy on earth right now that is the worst enemy that we have ever went up against. We have an arch enemy. So to say that we are our worst enemy, you pretty much do what? You absolve them. Think about it. So if you got 3 enemies and you say, well, that's my worst enemy, number 1 is my worst enemy. So number 2 and number 3 are your less enemies. So your focus become on what? The one that's your worst, number 1. So we're saying that we are our worst enemy, that we become our primary focus, absolving them, thereby allowing them to continue to run rampant in our lives. That's fool's thinking. It's fool's thinking to say that.
All right, Ashe. Well, family, we have ran over time. It is now 9:21. But this was a great conversation. Thank you so much, Baba, for taking time out to come online and share with us in the community. Please, family, share this information. Don't hoard, don't keep it to yourself. Don't roll over in your bed tonight and just be done. Share this information. You never ever know who's on the other end of that share that can get this information and it be the catalyst to change their entire existence. And you did that by tapping the share button. So don't hold this information hostage, family. Get it out there. And yeah, so that was our part 2 the Black vote. So we all have a choice in the matter. Of course, nobody can drag you away from the poll and nobody can drag you to the poll. So it's your choice and your option to do whatever you decide to do. But we thought that here on the Empower Hour, it would be a good idea to have a discussion, a holistic discussion around the whole part of the situation. So thank you, Baba, for bringing it right back to the center for us.
No, thank you and Sister Hanifa. I appreciate what y'all do. It's beautiful, it's wonderful. I'm always excited about being on y'all show. I love being with y'all too. I do. And what I would like to just say for those that are listening, to be a little bit more clear, is always understand politics and being political from the position of group interest. That's the basis of it. Electoral politics is just one form in which you can utilize to execute your politics. But your politics are always about your group. It's always about your group. And through electoral politics, it allows you an opportunity to access the power and the resources that's vested within the governing body or the governing instrument. Now, we don't have anybody that's gonna take hold of that power and wield it in our best interest. If we wanna go in that arena, then we need to organize and we need to raise up competent, authentic Black people and then put them in that arena. But just to be talking about the lesser of 2 evils, that's fool's logic. That's white man's logic.
That's right. All right, family. So if Hanifa doesn't have anything more to add, we'll wrap it up right here.
No, I just appreciate everyone for tuning in. And again, as always, Baba Imhotep, we honor you, we respect you, we love you. And we always appreciate you. I'm sure we're going to have you on for some other topic again. And it's going to be just as fiery. Those of you guys that have tuned in, we appreciate your support. We see all the shares and the hoteps and everything else in the comment section. You guys kept it live tonight. And just be sure to tune in. We are back. We are going to be on every Monday at 8 p.m. Sometimes it's going to be Alkama myself, and sometimes we're going to have some guests on. So again, once again, we thank you guys. We love you guys, and let's just keep one mind, this fight towards our liberation as a people.
Ashe. And real quick, last thing, Baba Imhotep's, somebody asked to drop your Cash App handle, and of course your wife and Devon was right there on the screen. Your amazing wife Ife right there by your side. She dropped it. It's Baba Imhotep, right? Yeah. $ Baba IMHOTEP.
Yes.
All right, family. Take care of each other out there.
All right. Thank you. Have a blessed evening.
Good evening.